Chapter 23. The Final Straw. I was the youngest sibling in California, but I became the oldest in Florida when I married Russ. Transitioning from being the baby to holding a place of authority was unreal. Of course, my prestige came from marrying the most admired son in the family. Russ wasn't just good-looking, tall, and strong. His character naturally demanded respect from everyone. His large bones, muscular body, and tall figure gave him an authoritative stance. He had a strong work ethic, fulfilling his hours at work and even working overtime when the opportunity arose. If anyone asked for help, he was there and went the extra mile. He didn't just earn everyone's respect. He deserved it. I was proud of him and proud to be his wife. However, his authoritative character also gave way to sarcasm, antagonism, and intimidation. Russ was used to verbally tormenting his siblings and felt free to badger me in the same manner. I wasn't his sibling. I didn't appreciate being ordered around and demoralized. His king-of-the-castle mentality left much to be desired, and he loved flaunting it, especially around his family. Our disagreements often involved hurtful, angry words and bitter attitudes, but were never physical. We argued over parenting, money, and intimacy. We even argued about the way we argued. There were times the topic had been hashed over so many times that just the hint of discussing it would create a storm of emotions. Russ had a booming voice that could overpower me during any disagreement. I resented being steamrolled over without a chance to respond. My only defense was to try and yell back or leave. Even so, Russ was quick to apologize. Making me laugh always helped. We knew we had to clear the air or the anger would smolder, waiting to flare up out of proportion at the next offense. We took, "Be angry, yet do not sin. Do not let the sun set upon your anger." Ephesians 4:26. In those first few years, I recall nights when Russ and I would stay up past midnight talking through an issue until it was resolved. His thoughtful sacrifice to lose sleep was not forgotten. There was no doubt God joined us together, but at times it seemed God was the only one who could keep us that way. I wrote home about how unhappy I was. I got a stinging letter back from my brother Jim, reminding me how I told them I was old enough to make my own decisions and not to complain to them again. It was especially difficult when we were with his family next door. He liked to order me around, make me the butt of his jokes, be sarcastic, and laugh about it. One evening while playing cards next door, Russ was in his usual arrogant mood. I was trying to take care of Kim in the bathroom, who was only 19 months old. The baby was crying, and he was ignoring it all. I was mad. At that moment, I decided enough was enough. I don't remember exactly what was said, but I decided it was the last straw. I had threatened to leave before, but Russ would always talk me out of it with remorse and humor. However, this time, I was making good on my promise, and he wasn't changing my mind. I grabbed both the girls, snuck out the back door, and left for the airport. I reviewed the evening's offenses along with all the similar ones I'd had to endure and was convinced this was what I wanted to do. My disappearance shouldn't be a surprise. We'd discussed this problem numerous times. I refused to shed a tear, as that would mean I was sad, and I didn't want to be sad. I wanted to be angry. I was flying to California, and he could stew over the reasons why. Parking the car, I carried Jennifer on my hip and pulled Kim along until we reached the ticket counter. I looked down my nose at the steward, trying to appear confident, and handed her my credit card. 3 tickets to San Francisco, I ordered. She glanced at my rumpled hair and the baby food stains on my t-shirt, then quoted a ridiculous amount. I tried covering the stains with Jennifer's blanket as I replied, "That's impossible. I just flew a few months earlier at 1/4 of that price." Taking a moment to draw a deep breath, she addressed me like a child. "Honey, people who walk in without a reservation have to fly first class." She tilted her head and waited for my response. I suppose I deserved that. We didn't look like first-class clients. My countenance fell as I told her I'd have to think about it. I wasn't as confident leaving the counter as I had been approaching it. We sat down in a lovely waiting area surrounded by couples wearing their Sunday best, carrying fancy handbags with overnight cases. It occurred to me that all I had was a purse and a baby dressed in a onesie covered in a thin blanket. Kim was wearing a cute dress with new sandals, offsetting our ragamuffin outfits. Everyone smiled as she danced around, entertaining them while I was trying to decide if I wanted to charge a first-class ticket. I was beginning to feel guilty. It would take Russ forever to pay that off. I was mad, but not that mad. Suddenly, Kim's group of admirers gasped and looked at me. Glancing over at her, I saw her attempting to climb onto a couch. Her little dress had flipped up and she was naked from the waist down. Then it all came back to me. I had just taken her off the toilet when things erupted at home. In my race to leave, I grabbed both the girls and forgot to put Kim's underwear back on. For a fleeting moment, I tried pretending she wasn't mine, but it was too late. I leaped forward like Wonder Woman, threw the girls under my arms, and flew down the escalator and out the door. I don't know how I found my car, but once inside, I hightailed it toward the exit. Now I was crying. The exit was blocked by a wooden crossguard where an attendant waited. 75 cents, please. I looked straight ahead, avoiding eye contact, and held out my card. Cash only, she ordered. I didn't have any cash, not even 75 cents. Suddenly I looked at her full on and burst into a new set of tears. I blubbered, I don't have any money. I was leaving my husband, my daughter didn't have any underwear on, and I had to fly first class, and everyone was looking at me, and now I don't know what I'm going to do. Before I had finished my sob story, she lifted the gate and waved me on. As I drove home, I prayed to God, I don't want to leave Russ. I love him. I love his family. I have a great life. I started thinking about what happened with the naked butt, the casual clothes, the no suitcases, and even the 75 cents. This could have been a scene right out of a sitcom. That's when it occurred to me. God orchestrated this. He has such a sense of humor. I had to laugh as I played the events of the airport scene over again in my head. God didn't want me to leave. He wanted us to change. Not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path. Author unknown. Russ was worried when I got home. He didn't know where I had gone or what I was thinking. I was bold, even angry, when I told him I was never going to leave him again, but he was going to start treating me right. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Ephesians 5:33. I was as valuable in our relationship as he was, and I expected to be treated that way. Russ wasn't quite sure what to think. He told people I left as a subordinate and came back as an equal, which elevated my position in his eyes and in our marriage. He was still the head of our household, but I was no longer considered second class. Committing to stay together, no matter what, forced us both to work harder, and I believe God helped us honor that commitment. We made some life-altering changes. One of them was by attending a conference by Bill Gothard and applying his principles to our marriage. His meetings were popular during the 70s. It was a biblically based, week-long seminar called Basic Youth Conflicts. He taught parents how to raise their children and instructed couples on how to resolve conflicts. Russ realized it was important he demonstrated his love for me, not just in private, but also in public. I needed to give him respect because he was the head of our household, and I knew God worked through him to care for us. We had to learn to become one flesh in more than just a physical sense. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Mark 10:7-8. We learned some valuable lessons. However, we still didn't understand each other. We were like oil and water when it came to communicating. We knew there were disagreements and misunderstandings, but it wasn't clear where they were coming from until we read Please Understand Me by David Kersey and Marilyn Bates, a book that described our personalities. We were as different as night and day. He was negative, I was positive. He was realistic, I was a dreamer. He was organized, I was, well, you get the idea. We were complete opposites. We argued over our differences and couldn't seem to work together. I believed him to be the most contrary person I'd ever known. I had so many great ideas, but he would dismiss them before I had even finished. He never seemed to support anything I thought we should do. Every proposal was met with no before I could even spell out the details. He saw me as a dreamer and unrealistic. I saw him as disagreeable and obstinate. It felt like we were constantly pulling against each other. I was like my dad, a visionary. Russ was negative, like my mom. We needed the Lord's help. After reading Please Understand Me, we had to laugh. It described our personalities so accurately that it was as if it knew us better than we knew ourselves. Once the Lord began to work in our marriage, I was thankful for a man who could see problems before they happened. Russ recognized and appreciated my dreams and put feet to my adventures. I realized his advice was invaluable. He was godly, insightful, and wise. According to the book, my personality was called the journalist, which could not have been more accurate. Gathering information, writing it down, and dispersing it seemed to be the journalist's specialty. I had certainly done that over the years. I was bubbly, versatile, and a visionary. As a visionary, I had lots of great ideas, plans, and inspirations, which I eagerly shared with Russ. He was penned the trustee. He was decisive in practical affairs, extraordinarily persevering and dependable. He would perform his duties without flourish or fanfare. When it came to decisions, it wasn't that Russ was negative, it was that he could see problems and roadblocks others were oblivious to. Consequently, his responses seemed negative as he pointed out the pitfalls. However, once I realized Russ could immediately tell if my ventures were viable or not, I was open and eager to hear his opinion. Russ realized my ideas were a gift and began to take them seriously. So, what was the unorganized, bubbly, rule-bending person doing with the dependable, stable, keeping the ship on a steady course individual? The book said I attracted Russ with my vivacity and sparkle, which was enchanting to the sober and careful trustee. He provided an anchorage and safe harbor for my adventurous tendencies. The book described my personality as if I were a kite blowing in the breeze looking for opportunities. Russ's personality was stable. He held the string that kept us grounded. With all major decisions, Russ would thoughtfully weigh the risks and conclude with, if we pursue this, what's the worst-case scenario? If we could live with that, we'd work together toward that goal and leave the results up to God. We saw the Lord answer prayers, bless our efforts, and move us along the path He orchestrated for us to follow time and time again.